Today is January 3rd, 2019. The following interview was conducted with Mr. Carl Yoshimine in Anaheim, California. Please start by telling us your birth date, where you were born, and where you live now.
I was born in San Diego, California, March 31st, 1924.
Could you please tell us a little bit about your parents' background?
My parents are from Japan. My father was born in Kagoshima. My mother was born in, I can't remember.
What were their names?
My father's name was Kakuo Yoshimine. My mother's name was Shinobu Yato.
Can you please spell their first and last name?
Kakuo is Kakuoyosshimine. Shinobu Shinobuyato.
How many siblings do you have?
My parents had two children, Masao Yoshimine and Carl Yoshimine.
Did any of them live in Anaheim?
No, none of them live in Anaheim.
What were your parents' occupation before the war?
Before the war, they were wholesale jobbers in the produce market in San Diego.
So your family lived before the evacuation in the city of San Diego, or?
Yes, we lived in San Diego, a suburb of Ocean Beach, California.
What was the role of religion in your family?
It was the Japanese Congregational Church in San Diego. It was a Protestant religion.
How did people in your community first react to the enforcement of the relocation order of Japanese Americans during World War II?
Well, the people that were in our neighborhood were shocked that we had to be relocated to Poston, Arizona, which is a Indian reservation in Arizona. We lived in Poston 3, which was made up of Japanese Americans and people from Japan, from Central California, and also from San Diego, California. Okay. I was only a Christian by name. I was very angry that we were relocated because we were American citizens. So when I was home living in the barrack in Poston 3, I would curse angrily because we were American citizens, and then I would put on my nice American Japanese face and look very smart and happy. But I was very angry, and I taught a second grade class of 28 children, and but I was very angry. But there were people that were living in our Poston block that seemed very happy and joyous, and I couldn't understand how they could be like that when we were living in this awful, hot, heated Poston, Arizona. So they invited me to church, and while I was at church, I heard about the gospel of Jesus Christ, that he died for us, that you need to receive him as your Lord and Savior, and that you had to have him in your heart. So when I returned home and said that I had received Christ to my parents, and they noticed that I didn't curse and yell at them anymore, and my mother asked, "What happened to you, Carl?" And I said, "The Lord cleaned my mouth and he also cleaned my heart. So my heart was clean and pure from that time on. And since then I made an application from the War Relocation Center, which was run by the Quaker group of people. They recruited the Japanese American or anyone that desired to leave the camp and settle in the Midwest. So I applied for that application, and I went to school at Asbury College, which is in Wilmore, Kentucky. I went there for 4 years. Then I went to the Theological Seminary for 1 year and received my Christian education master's degree. And then I graduated from there and went to Berkeley Theological Seminary in Berkeley and received my master's in theology. And from there I joined the Free Methodist Church. And from that process, I am a Free Methodist to this day. For 43 years, I served in the Free Methodist Church as a pastor.
So how was your relationship with your parents once you changed your philosophy about life?
How my parents felt
Yeah.
about them? After I joined the church, Free Methodist Church, they were very, very happy. They supported my education through their financial resources, and wherever we went, they were very happy in whatever church I served, as well as the Pacific Coast Japanese Free Methodist Conference, of which I was a member. Yes?
When you found out you had to leave to go to Poston, were there any families who resisted and didn't want to go?
Oh, did you? Were there other families in San Diego that rejected and didn't want to go
Yes.
to Poston?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember of anyone rejecting and wanting not to go. I can't remember. At that time I was 17 years old, but I can't remember in the Japanese community of hearing anyone.
What was your family's reaction to the order?
To us going into camp,
Right.
they were not very happy at all because we had to sell all our personal goods home. Well, we were renting a home, but all we had was 2 duffel bags and 1 suitcase, and went to San Diego to the depot there and boarded the train, which took us to Santa Anita Assembly Center, where we lived in a horse's stable. It was very, very discouraging because we smelled the remains of where the horses lived, and it was very uncomfortable.
How did your family feel about the U.S. government at the time?
Well, they weren't very happy about being relocated and going to Santa Anita and also to Poston, Arizona. But when they were asked yes and no, all of us answered affirmative that it was all right. That was one of the questions that were asked of everyone that was there.
Were you surprised that no one around you, your neighbors, the San Diego city government, or anyone stood up for you to say you shouldn't go to camp?
Well, there were some people, our next door neighbors were of German descent and from Germany, and they were very shocked and affirmed that we shouldn't have to go. And they were so kind to take some of our personal property and keep it during the war, because they thought it was unfair for us to have to dispose of our personal property, the things that we needed, to keep if we were to come back.
Which of your family members had to go to camp?
Well, all of us had to go to camp except my father, because in those days there were in the community organizations which tied to the prefectures of Japan. And because of his involvement, that he had to be removed from our family, my mother and my brother and I, three of us went to Poston, Arizona, and then my father went to I forgot what they call it, various camps where he had to go. And finally, he landed in Crystal City, Texas. And then after that, he was released and then came to Poston, Arizona. He developed his skills in cooking, making all kinds of food. And because of his knowledge of culinary foods, he became a director of all the foods in Poston 3. So he worked with a Caucasian person who was a go-between, and he ordered all the food that came to Poston 3, and it was made the menus and so forth, and did that. And after a while, when people started to leave, before the camp closed, he was elected director of the whole camp by the Japanese. But then, as in some camps and in Poston 3, there were people thought that if you were in friendly relationship with the Caucasian, that you were a traitor to the Japanese people. So immediately after the camp closed, they took my father and took him to, I don't know whether it was Manzanar or somewhere away from the group of Japanese people, and protected him from being shot at or mistreated.
So he
So
was
he was
considered a traitor.
protected. And then after that, he was released to Los Angeles, and he was hired because of his skill in culinary cooking to a private cafeteria. There were 11 cafeterias in the Los Angeles area, and he became one of the hired cooks. And he would hire people that came from camp and give them jobs. And they were very appreciative because there were 11 places where people could, seek employment. And he worked himself up, and they sold the whole 11 to the Jolly Green Giant Company, and he worked for them. And as he retired, as their gift to him for his service to the company, they took my mother and my father to New York City, and they showed him the city and gave him a good time there. And then after that, they gave him a pension for his services for his rest of the life. So I thought that was amazing for a first-generation Japanese who never spoke English before, who learned how to speak some English to work himself up. It was only in America that you could do. And to imagine going to camp and going through all that, and yet he was honored after the war, that he was of service to the people in America by his skill. So that's a kind of a turnaround, really. And so it shows you what kind of a country that we really live in, even now that we're grateful for that experience and we receive that experience for that. And because of that, he was able to financially help us all the way through our school and help us with our education and our Christian faith. He had white
Apron?
Yeah.
not uniform, but a cook's uniform. I don't know if he had one of those hats, the doll, And then my mother worked for dispensing food for people that children and adults that needed special food for their dietary needs. She also was in kind of a service area for the people in Poston 3.
So how long did you stay in Poston?
How long were they in Poston?
Yeah, from 1942 to when?
My parents are for me.
For your whole family?
My whole, well, I left a year later. Yeah, well, I left in 43 then. And my brother left in 43.
So your mother stayed the whole time?
Yeah. Until they were moved to this place that they felt safe.
So what, you would think they left in 44 or 45?
Maybe leading to 45. Whenever the camp closed is when they left.
45.
Okay.
So when you went to camp, you mentioned that you were only allowed to bring what you could carry. What did you pack to bring to camp?
Well, we heard that it was going to be in a rough territory, so we went and bought Levi's. We had never bought Levi, we used to wear regular clothes, not Levi. So we remember taking Levi. I can't remember other things that we took. I know when we got to camp, we were given a kind of big, long gunny sack, and we had to put hay in it to make a mattress. That's what we slept on. And then when we went into the barracks, the wood was put together closely, so all the dust would come through the bottom, and then the windows were closed tightly, so the dust would come through there. So later on, they put linoleum on the floor, and they fixed the window so all the dust wouldn't come. They allowed us to shop, and the way we shopped was there was the commissary in camp, but they also gave us a Sears and Roebuck catalog, and we mailed and bought things through the Sears and catalog, and we were allowed to have the drip dry cooler blowing into, so our neighbors made a Dutch door between our house and theirs, and we left it open, and we got cool air from their place.
Do you have any regrets of things that you had to leave behind?
Pardon me?
Do you have any regrets of things you had to leave behind?
No, really. I guess our car and and maybe, personal things like we had a radio and a Victrola and, things like that. And we had a Ringer washing machine, and, just things that would make us comfortable in living in a home, in any home.
So, since you said you were 17 when you went to camp, so
Yeah.
you weren't able to graduate from high school.
Oh, yes. I graduated in 1941. And then I went to college, San Diego State College, my first freshman year. The war broke out on December 7th. I still went to college until we were evacuated in February when they gave the executive order.
What was a normal day like for you in Poston?
Well, after I became a Christian, I was very happy. I would get up and I had a job. So, I think it was the time job, you got $19. And then the regular job is 17. And then I think it must be $15 or $14 for a common job, a labor's job. That was our pay scale.
So for you, when you started the day, what did you eat for breakfast?
I can't remember, but we sure had a lot of apple butter jam. It was in the jar. It was a brown jam, and I think we had squid. A lot of squid. I didn't like that. Those are some of the things I didn't like, so I must have not remembered what I liked.
So let's say you get up in the morning, you had breakfast, then what did you do for the rest of the day?
Well, there was kind of a commissary or something where you could buy some food to bring home. One thing was the common that I think the women were upset was where they took showers. There was no privacy. They just went in a big room and everybody took a shower. For male, that didn't bother it, because that was common at school, in public school. I mean, later on, when we were in public school, that was I get up and eat, and I would prepare my lessons for my class, because I had 3 groups in my classroom. I had the second grade, the first grade, and preschool. So I had to prepare 3 different lessons every single day for all 3 of my groups. And it was progressive education. So if they were naughty, then we would vote and say, well, what would we do to change you to become not so, to be disciplined? So they voted to have you stand in the corner if you were bad. So, they loved to stand in the corner because they didn't have to do their homework. So that didn't work, so we voted to demote them, that they would have to go to the first grade. Oh, and they hated that, to be demoted. That's very shameful, to be a first grader, and from a Japanese family, that's even worse, to be demoted. So they shaped up pretty well when they got demoted. And then they would bring comic books to school. So I would take them away, and then I would put them in my teacher's drawer. And then I'd excuse my children to go out and play for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. While they were outside, I would take the comic book and I would look and then I'd hide it when they came out. So that was something I enjoyed at school, when they bought their comic book.
So then after school was over, what did you do for the rest of the day?
Well, like I said, I usually had to prepare because, I would have to make homework for them during school. So we didn't have any, I forgot. It was kind of a jello that you put down and you put it and you made copies that way. I forgot what to call it.
Carbon paper.
What?
Carbon paper.
No, not even carbon paper. Anyway, so it was, the preparation was a lot of work.
So
Then I would take those home and I correct them.
So what would you do for dinner?
What I do for dinner? I'll go to the mess hall and eat.
So what time would you usually go to bed?
Maybe 9:30, 10. 9:30, 10. They didn't have any lights out, I don't believe.
So what were the other activities that you could do in Poston?
Oh, they had baseball teams, they had movies, they had dances, they had proms, they had a newspaper that would come out, I don't know, weekly. Different people would work on church was very active. They had what you call Singspiration. The group would go together and they would sing all kind of choruses. And my friend and I edited a book of what we call testimony. It was what Christ meant to me while I was in camp. And we did get a mimeograph machine then, so we put that together, and I drew some artwork on that and put it together. Yeah. In fact, one of the teachers in Poston 1 was a home economic teacher, and she helped make a quilt. And so our sister-in-law has her a name and quilt, and that one is now in Smithsonian Institute.
Oh,
yeah, from Poston, and you can go and see it. We went to see it when we went to the Smithsonian. We saw that actually.
What was it like during the winters and the summers in Poston?
Well, it was very hot during the summers, very, very hot. Winter, it cooled down, but it was still uncomfortable.
So then, did you have enough access to food and clean water?
Oh yeah, we had food, water to drink.
Were you able to have contact with people from the outside when you were in Poston? Were you able to write letters?
Oh yeah, and people would hike to the river and then some of the things that they developed was a carving of birds, little small birds. They carved birds, and then around the barracks they also had enough water. They planted different trees and made it kind of beautiful. And in fact, because of that, the American Indians developed farming. They were given, I don't know, 7 acres of farmland, and they were able to subsist because of what they learned from the Japanese how to make things grow and sell.
Did people in camp get together for holidays like Christmas, 4th of July?
Well, of course, Christmas would be more in tradition with a Christian church. So, you know, they had good. I don't remember 4th of July.
How about New Year's?
I don't think so, because they wouldn't have any Japanese food.
Okay.
I mean, you know, Oshogatsu food.
Were you allowed to leave camp to go into town?
We could go into town. We couldn't go into town. No, we couldn't go into town.
Okay. Did your
Well, why would we go into town? I mean, Parker, Arizona, you mean? No.
Did anyone in your family go out to work?
Oh, yeah, did they go out to work?
No, did they go? Because in some of the camps they went out to
Yeah,
harvest.
I know, yeah, they would
just for
harvest
the day,
sugar beets way up north, way up north, Colorado, way up there, Idaho, that they went out to do sugar beets. Then some people left camp and lived around those farm areas and went out and tried to make a livelihood, you know.
So did, when you were in camp, were you getting updates of the progress of the war? Were you getting any news?
Well, there were people that volunteered for 42nd, and then there were, my brother was in CEI, counterintelligence
You
corps.
can get news from the outside.
Yeah, so we would hear.
Do you think the incarceration camps provided Japanese citizens with protection from public scrutiny?
Yeah, I think they get protected. If they stayed out, they would have gotten
Persecuted.
persecution, and yeah.
Do you feel there were any restrictions placed on Japanese Americans after they're released from the incarceration camps?
Well, during the war, they used to write, "Don't buy food from the Japs" or something like that. During the war, you went out of camp.
To harvest.
You went out of camp during wars. She went out of camp in Arizona, and there was a free zone and a restricted zone. Everybody was south of Grant Boulevard. They went to camp, and everybody out of Grant Boulevard north were free. They went to school and tried to. They made a living.
Since you said your family was leasing your home when you were living in San Diego,
Well, we were renting. So,
you rented?
Yeah.
So then you didn't have any property to
no,
come back to?
no.
Okay.
We weren't able to. I mean, unless you were old enough. I think to put it in a citizen's name.
What did you learn from your experience in Poston?
Well, what I learned was that personally, maybe not everybody would learn this, that I have received a faith in Jesus Christ, and that helped me go through high waters and dark water, and that helped me through the rest of my life.
Did you ever worry that another incarceration may take place? Did you ever worry that that this experience in being put into camp during World War II would ever happen again?
I hope not, because it would be very devastating. I think a few years ago when something happened, they were saying, let's put people in camp again, but that was, that blew over. I can't remember what.
Do you think about 9/11?
I don't know. Yeah, it was because I was in a public school education, and I was doing calligraphy, and the teacher was very biased. I thought, says, "Oh, well, let's put them in a camp," and I thought that was not too good.
Do you think things changed before and after the war in terms of prejudice toward Japanese Americans? Do you think things have changed about how people look at Japanese Americans?
Oh yeah, I think so. Because you look at the job market where people are now living, the second generation, third generation, and fourth generation. Look where jobs that they're in. And the other night we were looking at TV, and they gave a long video on Hershey.
Miyamura.
Hershey,
Miyamura.
yeah, and what he did and how they elevated him and gave the honor,
Purple. I don't know.
I don't know what medal they gave him. So they recognize that, and so I think a lot of change. Just looking at where people are working now, it reveals that a high degree of being integrated in American society.
After you got out of camp, were there any obstacles or prejudice that you faced from people?
After I got out of camp, was any obstacles?
And discrimination against you being Japanese?
Well, it just depends on where you were, what kind of neighborhood you were in, and whom you came in contact. I think there was some because of the majority of people that served in the armed services might have had some unpleasant memories, so there might have been, but not in general. I don't think they were discriminated publicly, maybe in the work process that they were not given promotions and things like that, but I don't think they were discriminated highly.
Was there anything when you went to Ashbury that comes to mind in terms of a unique story that you experienced during that time?
While I was going to school in Kentucky, that was because there was discrimination between white and black. You know, you couldn't sit in the same train station, and I went to Dallas, Texas, and we sat in a trolley car, and you had a little sign that you could move back out of your seat. If you sat there and I didn't want you to sit there, I'd move my seat and put you back, and you had to sit back. The black person had to. So there was discrimination. And so that was just universal there. Then Martin Luther King kind of changed that, attitude. So,
No, so in terms of, can you share some of the history of the Anaheim Japanese Free Methodist Church? Can you share some of the history of the church?
At the beginning, it was just one service, and then it divided into two services because the church wanted to reach multi-generation. It's not just single generation church; it's multi-generation, and because of that, right now we're in a present building program. And the main chapel is going to be extended to 5 feet to the curb of the front of the church, for the church. So we're thinking about is to reach the community. So if we're to reach the community, we have to have room enough for them to be able to have plays, to have music and bands that play the worship song. It's thinking about the future. So and then we have actually about 4 pastors in the church, and each one has their capacity of being able to communicate the way they speak to the whole congregation, and that has been very helpful.
That one back. Then, how did you meet your wife?
How did I meet my wife? Well, I was in seminary, and I was appointed. You're appointed to a church. So after I was appointed, I was in Berkeley, California, and I was appointed to Fowler, which is in Central California. And she's a pastor's daughter. So I was appointed there for 1 year, and then I was appointed to the Los Angeles Free Methodist Church. And so then we missed each other. And so we started writing to each other. I left in June or July, and by September, was it September?
We were engaged.
In December, we were engaged. And then by the time, the following May, we were married. So that's our history of our.
Where were you married?
In the Los Angeles Free Methodist Church, because it was a larger church.
A lot of stuff I don't know.
Oh,
Well, you did a good job here.
We're not finished yet. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Is there anything else you would like to add about your feelings about living in Anaheim, working in Anaheim, basically in terms of telling the Anaheim story?
Well, I think it's very appropriate at this time that you are aware of the fact that the church is a part of the community and needs to be revealed to everyone here in Anaheim, as well as anyone that comes through Anaheim, and acknowledges how important history is, and how important people are in the community, no matter what race or where they came from and where they're going, to acknowledge the importance of recorded history, not just verbal history, but recorded history for the future of all generations.
So can you estimate how many years you've lived in Anaheim?
45 years?
Yeah, this is the only business.
How can we live 45 years? Oh, I guess so, because
Maybe not.
we retired.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I was that's true, because, we've lived in Anaheim that long, because after I retired.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.